my name is John Gold. I had to write that down. I recently wrote a book entitled 9/11 Truther: The Fight for Peace, Justice, and Accountability. It is basically the story of my life and the story of my life over the last decade since the 9/11 attacks happened. Cindy Sheehan, a woman who lost her son in the Iraq occupation, and someone that has been an inspiration to me for many years, was kind enough to write the foreword for my book. She is in attendance tonight, and I would like everyone to please give her a round of applause. By the way, she has books for sale with her, and also she wrote a book called Revolution: A Love Story that's available on her website, cindysheehansoapbox.com. Anything?
I do have these books for $5 if anybody wants.
There you go. Before I begin, I would like to thank Malcolm Chaddock, who put me in touch with Peace Fresno, Sam Cheney, and everyone else at Peace Fresno for giving me the opportunity to speak. I am grateful for any opportunity to do so. If I had known that writing a book would give me more opportunities to speak, I would probably have written one a long time ago. I always envisioned writing a book about the fight for 9/11 justice, but I expected that it would happen after everything was said and done. However, that didn't look like it was going to happen anytime soon, so I decided it was too important not to write now. I believe people needed to know the story of this fight. It wasn't my fight alone. In fact, I wasn't even a participant in this fight early on. I participated in what Dr. Michael Parenti refers to as the patriotic binge. I wanted revenge for what happened, just like most Americans. I wanted to bomb the shit out of the Middle East. I wanted the terrorists, which in my mind at the time included all Arabs, to pay for what they had done. I was as ignorant, if not more so, than most Americans at the time of the 9/11 attacks. I was terrified about it happening again, and I became addicted to the TV news. I had to know what was going to happen next. Unfortunately, I picked Fox News as my news channel of choice because they were the red, whitest, and bluest. I was never political before 9/11. I had never cared about politicians or the policies of the U.S. government prior to the 9/11 atrocities. As I said, this wasn't always my fight. Very early on, people in New York City gathered in churches to be with people who experienced loss on that day. Like anything as bad as 9/11, you would expect that people eventually started to ask questions about how and why the attacks occurred. People who lost someone that day started asking questions and had every right to do so. There were also others who questioned things early on. Political activists who have been following the actions of the U.S. government for very many years. It is the people of New York, the family members who lost someone that day, and the veteran political activists that started this cause early on. On the day of 9/11, I did have one question about what happened, and that question was, after the Pentagon was struck, I asked my friend at work, I said, where the hell is our military? And I didn't really think about it much after the attacks. It wasn't until January 2002 when I started to pay closer attention to the news regarding 9/11. In January of 2002, George Bush and Dick Cheney went to Tom Daschle's office and asked him to limit the scope of the investigations into 9/11. That was according to CNN. According to Tom Daschle, when asked by Tim Russert, and the following is an excerpt from a conversation that Tim Russert and Tom Daschle had. Mr. Russert, so both the President and the Vice President urged you not to have an investigation of the events of September 11th? Senator Daschle, correct. Mr. Russert, you're absolutely convinced of that? Senator Daschle, I can give you the dates I have. Mr. Russert, what words did they use? Senator Daschle, well, I don't recall the exact words, but the motivation was that they didn't want to take people off of the effort to try and win the war on terror. They were concerned about the diversion of resources, the diversion of manpower in particular, and that was the reason given to me by both the President and the Vice President about their concerns involving an investigation of any kind. Mr. Russert, it wasn't, let's not have a national commission, but let's have the intelligence committees look into this. It was, No investigation by anyone, period. Senator Daschle, that is correct. That's the end of their conversation. In my mind, I thought, why would the president and the vice president of all people not want to know exactly how and why this happened so as to make sure it could never happen again? However, even though I heard this news, I was still pretty much involved in the patriotic binge. I started a job at a new company in 2002, and I made sure to post an American flag on their website when I got to the company. My friend Mike Jackman, he founded Student Scholars for 9/11 Truth. He spoke to Tom Daschle, and he confirmed what Daschle told Russert. It wasn't until May of 2002 when news of the August 6th PDB came out, and I saw how the families had to fight for an investigation that I really started to become interested and involved. If you remember, after 9/11, we were told repeatedly that the government had no warnings that the attacks would take place. We were told repeatedly that the government had no idea that anything like that could occur. These were lies. And the August 6, 2001 presidential daily briefing that George Bush received in Crawford, Texas, while on vacation, is only one example of this. I'm not going to go through the massive archives of warnings the Bush administration received before 9/11. I'm not going to go through the massive archives of people telling us that there were no warnings and that nobody in government had any idea that this was going to happen. Instead, I'm going to read a quote to you from 9/11 family member Patty Casaza. Before I do that, though, I'm going to give you a brief history of the Jersey Girls, of which Patty was a part of. As I said, after the 9/11 attacks, the family members started asking questions about what happened. 4 of those family members, Kristen Brotweiser, Lori Van Auken, Mindy Kleinberg, and Patty Casaza, were the most outspoken with regards to those questions. They all lost their husbands on 9/11, and they were greatly responsible for making sure the questions of the family members were heard. They became known informally as the Jersey Girls, but their group is known as the September 11th Advocates. 9/11 family member Monica Gabrielle is also among their group. When the 9/11 Commission started their work, these family members, along with others, started what was called the 9/11 Family Steering Committee. They provided hundreds of well-researched questions for the 9/11 Commission to answer. They worked alongside staffers of the 9/11 Commission. They attended every hearing of the 9/11 Commission. The chairman of the 9/11 Commission, Thomas Keene, said, quote, "They monitor us, they follow our progress, they've supplied us with some of the best questions we've asked. I doubt very much if we would be in existence without them," end quote. Now, in November 2007, there was a conference held in West Hartford, Connecticut. At that conference, 9/11 family member Patty Casaza surprised us by attending, and it was a big surprise. For me, I'd never met any of them. She, along with 9/11 family member Bob McElveen, ambassador, his wife was connected to money of 2 of the hijackers. I think that's significant. You know, we hear that the Pakistani ISI was alleged to have ordered Ahmed Omar Saeed Sheikh to wire transfer $100,000 to Muhammad Atta. That didn't find its way into the report. And, you know, that story just went away. It just died. I can't find. Right now, I think he's in a jail. Ahmed Omar Saeed Sheikh is in jail right now in Lahore, Pakistan. I think. He was running a terrorist network from inside jail. This is how powerful that guy was. Let's see, was that 2 or 3? I don't know. NORAD lied. The 9/11 Commission itself, which was horribly corrupt and compromised, was going to refer the matter regarding NORAD's lies to the Department of Justice for a criminal investigation, and they decided not to. The families. You know, they get no attention by the media at all. Nobody knows, like I mentioned, that the family members have called for a new investigation. Nobody knows that. If you're a moral person, hearing about the family members that are seeking justice, it might motivate you if you feel for these people, which I do. So.
I don't know. I think the families is a huge way to communicate with people, and I've used Bob McElveen's story on how he he was one of the only victims to actually get the body of
Yes.
his son, and how he explained how his arm was.
Right. Bob McIlvaine thinks that the cause of death for his son was explosives. And I'll talk about the buildings for a second. I'm not a controlled demolition advocate. I have never been. I'm not a scientist. I'm not an architect. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a physicist. I'm not qualified to tell anybody what happened to those buildings. I don't think that you should have to be any of those things to understand the need for 9/11 justice. However, there are questions about those buildings. And it was a crime scene. And there are family members who have questions about how those buildings came down. And as long as it's an important question to them, it's an important question to me. But I'm not going to use it to advocate because a lot of people have a hard time believing it. So I try to go, baby steps.
There's like a major reason why we need to question 9/11 that a lot of people want to gloss over for some reason, but it's so obvious. It came out of the Bush administration. They're frickin' liars. They
Right.
lie about everything. The empire lies
But not
about
9/11.
everything. But not. I know that's a problem with progressive people on my side. They say, oh, no, they didn't lie about 9/11, but they lied about Iraq and blah blah blah.
Right.
So, that's one of the major reasons we have to question the official story, because it came out of the Bush administration. Known freaking liars, admitted liars. They've admitted lying about so many things, but oh no, they didn't.
And have gotten caught with lying about other things.
9/11 has been fetishized in this country. It's a religion now.
Right.
And so that's and like most religions, based on lies. So we have to
Right.
really just that's the most obvious thing I tell people. Bush is a liar. You hate Bush. You hate Cheney. So come on, people. Get a grip.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Did you do much research into the Oklahoma City bombings?
Have I done research into it? No, but I know that others have. My focus is on 9/11. I know that there are other problems out there, but this is the post 9/11 world. Okay, it's the world that's justified based on that event. So that's my main focus. I know that there are other people who focus on the Oklahoma City bombing and JFK, MLK, RFK assassinations, and so forth. Go ahead.
I do believe that all these events, whether it be Oklahoma City, Waco, all these major events are tied together, including 9/11. I believe that they are all, somehow tied together. And yes, we are in a post 9/11 world, but you can't ignore the events that occurred.
Absolutely, you can't.
And the events that occurred after. I think they're all connected. And I don't want to go with the term New World Order, but you can go with whatever term you want to go with. They are all connected.
I've
timeline of how certain powers that be, or whatever term you want to use, want to reach their goal.
I often use historical references to try and show people that history repeats itself with regards to 9/11, the Gulf of Tonkin incident, the Reichstag fire, and so forth. But again, have you ever heard the story of the boy who cried wolf? It's hard enough to get people convinced that we were lied to about 9/11 without having to try and convince them of every other conspiracy. Go ahead.
I don't know. I don't like the term New World Order. I think it should be New World Chaos. So there's no order. And I guess India and I had the same thought about the 9/11 thing is the connect the project of New American Centuries in the 90s.
Right.
That they needed a new order.
Well, some people treat New World Order as if it's a group of people that you can hold accountable. But there's no group of people called the New World Order. It's just a philosophy. It's an ideology.
Empire.
Empire.
That's
Correct.
what it is, controlling the world. That's what it is.
Right. Go ahead, sir.
I heard you speak here, and I hear mostly your focus is coming from getting justice for the families of the 9/11 victims. My biggest problem with the post 9/11.
Well, we all deserve justice, but go ahead.
Right, but my biggest problem with them, I don't disagree with you, but my biggest problem in the post 9/11 start with 9/11, in my view, but it's
Right, it didn't.
of the loss of individual liberty and freedom that we have. And you kind of ran down a lot of those, enumerated those things as far as the wars that have started that have, were based on this complete bullshit lie. All the TSA and all the NDAA and all these things that are stacking on top of this platform of falsehood. The whole platform of it is a lie. And it's like every day you continue to read more and more about all the liberties that we're losing. Now my question to you is, and I always ask people that kind of believe this stuff, what do you think, or do you think there's going to be an awakening for people, the general people, the people that you have to convince that 9/11 is maybe questionable? They completely abide. I mean, do you think that there's going to become a point of where it kicks on for people, like, hey, what's going on here?
I hope someday. I've always had a pipe dream that suddenly everybody would wake up about 9/11 and take away their 9/11 card and the wars would end and our civil liberties would be returned and so forth. I don't know that that's ever going to happen. But, again, that points towards a revolution, a need for a revolution. Whether that revolution is because of 9/11 or whether that revolution is because people are losing their houses, I don't know. But the 9/11 card needs to be abolished. It needs to be taken away from those who would use it to do horrible things. Horrible, horrible things. Go ahead.
I guess the way to take that card away is to just say, we don't know what happened.
Right. Well, I say that I don't know what happened, but I also take it a step further and look at all the information that I know, and honestly, they have earned the title of suspect. I mean, we were talking about the Saudi ambassador, whose wife was connected to money of two of the hijackers. Did you know in March of 2001 he was having a discussion with Bush about the need for decisive action in Iraq? This is Bush talking to somebody whose wife is connected to money of two of the hijackers. Nobody talks about that. And also, Bandar said that he admitted that the Saudi GID were tracking the hijackers with precision. Did he pass along any of that information to his good buddy Bush? I don't know. It's a good question, though. Go ahead.
You said that NORAD told some lies.
Right.
Can you say more about that?
NORAD gave 3 different timelines with regards to their response that morning. They also fudged up their mission, which was to monitor the skies over America. For 9/11, they said that their job was to look outward. That nothing ever happens over American skies. But meanwhile, they're intercepting drug traffickers all the time. The Payne Stewart plane was intercepted, if everybody remembers that. They do it all the time. And, there were other lies, and it gets really complicated between the FAA and NORAD. And honestly, off the top of my head, I don't remember all of it. But the bottom line is they did not intercept those planes that day.
No, they did not, because there was a training exercise happening.
The war games, the military exercises caused confusion on the ground. The 9/11 report had one war game mentioned in the back of the book, and it had the wrong description for what that war game was. I think there were upwards of 7 war games taking place that morning, and there were reports that they did cause confusion on the ground. And I think when General Ralph Eberhart was asked about it, he said that the war games improved our response that morning. Really? Because it didn't look like it helped to me. Go ahead.
Do you believe that the government gave us the true names of the hijackers?
There's problems with the identities of the hijackers. There are people who say that the hijackers are still alive. I don't believe that. I think some journalist somewhere would have talked to one by now. But there are issues with regards to the identities of the hijackers. In fact, I think on the day of 9/11, one name was put out, and then that was taken away, and another name was put in. And there were stolen identities by some of them, forged documents as well. There's another one. A lot of the hijackers got their visas from the consulate in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Michael Springman, who used to work for that consulate said that it was a CIA consulate. And this CIA consulate was used to bring the Mujahideen to America and so forth for training, and then they sent them out. And he thinks that this same system was used for 9/11. I mean, they got their visas from the same exact place. Go ahead, I'm sorry, I couldn't see you.
Do you know if any of the black boxes from any of the, I guess, Ford airplanes was ever recovered?
Well, okay, the 9/11 report said that none of the FDRs or black boxes were found at the World Trade Center. I seem to remember that there was one found damaged for Flight 93 and one found for the Pentagon. But the 9/11 report said that the black boxes for the World Trade Center were not found. However, there were firemen, there were responders who wrote a book before the 9/11 Commission released their report. And in that book, they talked about how they, along with the FBI, found 3 of the 4 black boxes down at Ground Zero. And that story didn't actually become news until after the 9/11 report was released, and they said that none of them were found. There's a reporter by the name of Dave Lindorf who knows somebody at the NTSB who got a source who said that they were found at Ground Zero. So, odd, yes.
Well, if the passport of Atta and those people survive,
Right. Go ahead.
I have a question about like a black box found at the Pentagon. Are there pictures of it and stuff? Because I don't want to sound weird, but I'm not sure if a plane hit the Pentagon.
With regard,
It could have been like a missile or something like
that's
that.
fine. This has been an issue for years.
So I wonder if the black box was planted there, kind of like that suitcase. with
The thing about saying that everything is planted or faked is that people need to prove that before they start saying that. To me, people who automatically dismiss things as being fake or planted because it doesn't coincide with what they think happened, they pretty much lose their credibility